Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Keeping the Conversation Going, Creating a Comprehensive Prevention Plan for Sexual Assault Awareness Month and Beyond. In this webinar, presented by the National Sexual Violence Resource Center and the Clery Center for Security on campus, you'll learn how to leverage Sexual Assault Awareness Month to create a comprehensive prevention education program that engages your campus community in April and beyond. My name is Bethany Lamlinera, Member Services Manager for the Clery Center, and I'll be moderating today's webinar. You'll notice that there's a question pane on your control panel, and we encourage you to interact with us by typing in questions and comments there throughout the webinar. We'll dedicate the last few minutes to addressing any outstanding questions at the end. We'll also use the questions pane to communicate relevant information and links to resources if necessary, as I mentioned. This webinar will include brief poll questions, which you'll see pop up on your screen. And we're recording today's webinar session, and you'll receive the link to the recording within 48 hours, or you can visit the Clery Center channel on YouTube. Finally, we'll be conducting a short survey at the end of the webinar, and we would very much appreciate any thoughts and suggestions you can provide us so that we can continue to provide you with useful information and resources in the future. We have two incredible panelists from the National Sexual Violence Resource Center with us today, Annie Gebhardt and Laura Palumbo. Annie Gebhardt is a training specialist at NSVRC, where she develops resources and provides training and technical assistance on sexual violence prevention. She served as an advocate and preventionist in the movement to end sexual and intimate partner violence since 1999. Annie holds a master's degree in public health and a bachelor's degree in women's studies and sociology. Laura Palumbo is the prevention campaign specialist at NSVRC. Laura works collaboratively with national partners, media, and leaders in the anti-sexual violence movement, with planning and implementing Sexual Assault Awareness Month, an annual nationwide campaign to raise public awareness about sexual violence and educate communities and individuals on how to prevent sexual violence. For 5 years, she has led NSVRC in developing campaigns on healthy sexuality, sexual violence prevention, and creating materials for advocates, parents, youth, and college students. So with that, Laura and Annie, would you like to get started?
Sure thing. Thank you for that introduction. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today as we talk about keeping the conversation going and thinking about prevention, not just in terms of next month being Sexual Assault Awareness Month, but really as a part of your year-long campus efforts. Annie and I are representing the National Sexual Violence Resource Center, and hopefully you've heard of us, but if you haven't, it's not too late. You can see our website is on the screen, and that is hopefully a resource for you if you're, no matter what your role is on campus in learning more about sexual violence prevention and all of the resources and tools that our field has to offer. And today's agenda is really, we're going to have a very simple approach to this idea of building a long-term prevention plan. We're going to focus on three main aspects: matching your strategy to your goals, matching your message to your audience, and building a long-term prevention plan. And we're having this conversation because Sexual Assault Awareness Month is next month, and that is the campaign that we're very excited to be sharing about, but we're also really invested in campuses across the country having long-term prevention efforts that are sustainable and year-round, and we think that SAAM can be a part of that and that your efforts can go beyond that. So as you all may know, April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and it's coming right up, and I'd like to start our presentation out by learning a little bit more about what you all do in relationship to SAAM and what your role is on your campus for Sexual Assault Awareness Month. So we're sharing a poll, and the poll that's being shared, you have the opportunity to let us know if you lead the planning and implementation, if you give administrative support, if you participate in activities, or if you're new to talking about SAAM. And I'm seeing your responses as they come in, and it looks like we have a lot of folks that are new to SAM with us, which is exciting. We're almost half of the group is identifying as new to Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and then we have, oh my goodness, and then we have another third that has a leadership role in planning and implementing SAM. So we have both people at the really hands-on, leading the efforts level, and then also folks that are new, and then we have about a quarter of participants that give administrative support and a quarter of participants that participate in SAM activities. So thank you all for identifying. And then our next question is just also to learn a little bit more about what types of activities your campus organizes for SAM. And if you can use the poll to select if it's rallies, marches, or speak outs, things that are more like a single section workshop, multi-session curriculum, social marketing campaign, poster, poetry contest, or other. And we had to limit ourselves to, and you can also select all that apply. So if there are multiple, of these activities that you do for SAM or as a part of your prevention efforts, you can just let us know which ones are relevant to you. Okay, and okay, we closed out the poll, and it looks like about we have most folks representing single section workshops. So that was the most selected option. Then we have posters, poetries, or other form of contest, or maybe artistic engagement. We have a lot of folks that are participating on social media. Half of folks are doing or social marketing rather. And then a smaller group that's doing rallies, marches, and speak outs, and a very small group, about 15%, that are participating through multi-session curriculum. And so hopefully that's really helpful for us in how we're leading the conversation today to know what you're doing, but hopefully it's kind of something that you're able to learn from each other through and to see how other campuses are structuring their programming in areas that's similar and that there are differences. So clearly, events, advocacy, outreach, education, media, fundraising, activism, array of activities happen during SAM to work toward prevention and awareness goals. And we're really going to be talking today about thinking about those activities in a strategic way and thinking about them with a prevention orientation. And so a little bit about the NSVRC's role with SAM. We coordinate the National Sexual Assault Awareness Month campaign, and there's a national set of materials that we share with our partners in the field and the general public around an annual theme, and we identify a day of action, provide resources in English and Spanish. That includes educational materials as well as materials on planning a campaign and kind of what we're talking about today, comprehensive prevention planning. And tools for social media as well. We also provide training, technical assistance, and products for SAM if any of that can support your efforts as well. And this year's theme for SAM is Campus Sexual Violence Prevention, which is probably very relevant to a number of folks on the line, and for a number of reasons. I don't think anyone has missed the fact that this is really a huge topic in our field right now, but also in just our culture and the world overall. There's been so much media attention, political attention to the topic of campus sexual violence, and there's so many new processes and procedures for campuses, new legislation, and so by focusing on campus sexual violence prevention, we hoped to kind of contribute to that dialogue, and hopefully the materials that we created, which we're hoping are relevant to all audiences, are especially relevant to you as you're working on a campus program. So I'm going to pass the presentation along to my co-presenter Annie, who's going to be sharing about strategy and goals.
Thank you. So when planning for Sexual Assault Awareness Month, or SAM, and really when planning for your prevention efforts overall, it's very important to start by setting goals. And we often talk about a comprehensive approach to sexual violence as encompassing sort of these 4 broad categories of different types of goals and strategies. And each of these can play a really important role in a holistic approach to addressing sexual violence in campus communities. But it's important to be familiar with some of the distinctions among them so that we can make sure that the strategies that we use will get us to the goals that we want to achieve. So just really quickly, response, of course, happens after sexual violence has occurred and aims to lessen the impact of trauma by supporting survivors and their loved ones and intervening with offenders. So this includes all of our advocacy and counseling, offender management, adjudication, all of those kinds of things. And while response is clearly different from prevention, especially in campus settings, the response is so important in establishing a campus culture that really takes sexual violence seriously, that supports survivors, and that holds people accountable when they commit sexual violence. Awareness aims to increase community understanding of sexual violence, its prevalence, its effects, and also the services and resources that are available in the community. And awareness strategies often are also used to initiate relationships with community members and partners. So this often, particularly around Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and particularly I think on campuses, can include things like Take Back the Night or the Clothesline Project or those one-time sessions. And this historically has been a really significant focus around SAAM and on college campuses, and can be really helpful for sort of getting people in the door. But by itself, they don't really go far enough to change norms and ultimately change behaviors. So we can think about using awareness strategies as a springboard to bring people in so we can sort of recruit and train and support them as agents of change in their community in some of the other ways. Thinking about risk reduction, as the label implies, aims to reduce risk on an individual level by teaching potential victims strategies to recognize and escape danger. So this often looks like self-defense classes, particularly popular on college campuses, watch your drink campaigns, some of those kinds of things, which often are wildly popular on a lot of campuses. And research suggests that participation in some particularly self-defense programs can decrease a person's likelihood of being sexually assaulted in the future. But it's really important that we're always clear that while self-defense programs may reduce an individual's risk of sexual violence, they can't reduce the risk of sexual violence in the community, because someone who is inclined to commit sexual violence, unfortunately, may then decide to target someone else, where the risk sort of gets passed around but not eliminated from the community. So we want to, again, sort of push on to prevention. And when we say prevention, we are talking about strategies that are really aimed at reducing perpetration on a community level by changing the attitudes, behaviors, cultural norms, and systems that support sexual violence. So sort of going beyond raising awareness, beyond reducing individual risk, to engage the entire campus community in creating a long-term solution, and recognizing that everyone in the community has a responsibility and has a role that they can play in that process. So some examples of this are those multi-session programs that really build skills around healthy sexuality or bystander intervention, confronting oppression, also policies that lessen or eliminate some of those root causes of violence, and we'll talk about more examples as we go. So we want to open another poll and ask, thinking about these sort of 4 broad categories of goals and strategies, which types of goals have your Sexual Assault Awareness Month efforts usually focused on your campus? Has it been more focused on supporting survivors, sort of the response piece, more on increasing understanding and awareness, more around sort of the risk reduction, watch your drink campaign, self-defense, those kinds of things, safety tips, or around reducing perpetration on the community level? Okay, and answers are coming in, and it looks like about 75% of folks are saying that usually SAAM has focused on awareness, and awareness is in the name of the month, Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And that is very common, and it looks like about 11% have usually focused on reducing perpetration on the community level, and then 7% each have had a focus on the response or risk reduction. Great. And now we want to open one more poll. Which type of goals would you ideally like to focus on during Sexual Assault Awareness Month? Okay, so it's looking different. Not quite, but kind of. Awareness and prevention have sort of flipped. So it looks like more folks would ideally like to be focusing on prevention goals at 57%. 22% would like to perhaps continue to focus on awareness, that sort of springboard first step, and then 10% each for response and risk reduction. Thank you all very much for doing that. So with that majority, perhaps slim majority, but that 57% that would ideally like to be using SAAM to focus on prevention goals, we want to talk more about ways to use some of the activities you may already be doing during Sexual Assault Awareness Month and throughout the year, and sort of move them towards that reducing community level risk. Reducing perpetration throughout the campus community. So there are many different approaches to prevention. We think about bystander intervention, healthy sexuality, media literacy, gender equity, which also sometimes is framed as healthy masculinity, or different approaches to engaging men in doing sexual violence prevention work, and also other types of anti-oppression work. If you have additional approaches that you're taking, please feel free to share that in the question box, because we are also very happy to acknowledge that there are many, many, many different approaches to prevention. And we sort of quickly wanted to breeze through that whichever of those approaches you are taking, research suggests that these 9 principles are important characteristics of effective prevention. So as we're thinking of sort of boosting our efforts towards prevention, some of the things that we can use to sort of gauge that progress include a strategy that is comprehensive. So prevention, compared to awareness or risk reduction, really involves a system-wide, community-wide approach, going beyond individual training sessions, building on individual training sessions, to also include things like social marketing, policy change, and systems change to affect the larger environment. Sufficient dose is really a fancy way of saying that it takes more than one training session or poster campaign to change attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors related to sexual violence that have really been learned throughout a lifetime and from all kinds of different channels and communicators. So people will need to be exposed to prevention messaging multiple times over a longer period of time to buy in and really build skills for sexual violence prevention, and appropriately timed. So as you're thinking about exposing people to prevention messaging multiple times, it's also important to think about when different messages or approaches will be most effective. So thoughtful timing can ensure that messages are meeting the audience where they are, and those messages are then building on one another for maximum impact. And then, of course, socioculturally relevant is important to be speaking to the culture of individuals and the culture of your campus. Building positive relationships can really involve everyone in the community, using varied teaching methods so that people are getting messages in multiple formats, multiple times. theory-driven, making sure our efforts are really rooted in sound theory and research on effective prevention, using skilled trainers, and evaluating our efforts. And we're going to talk about each of those a little bit more as we go, but we wanted to take a moment to really think about these top three as we think about ways we can build on our existing awareness efforts and sort of move us towards prevention if that is the goal. So thinking about how can you expand your reach and expand your dose of your programming to boost your prevention power. So for example, a rally or a march and or a speak out like Take Back the Night, the Clothesline Project, other kinds of walks and marches. It can be a really important mainstay of Sexual Assault Awareness Month for many, many campuses. And I just came across posters that I still have from Take Back the Night events that I helped organize as a student nearly 15 years ago, and it was hugely significant to me as a student to be involved in that. But I also think it is helpful to think about ways to build on it to increase our reach and increase our dose. So one idea that I wanted to put out as kind of an example is to sort of add on like a political rally element to a rally or march or a speak out. And maybe working with students before the event or after to think about policy goals related to sexual violence prevention. They might be policy goals for campus policies. There might be current legislation being considered or proposed or debated in the state legislature or federal government that students could really play a role in helping to educate their peers, their community about policies related to sexual violence and its prevention, and really play a leading role in advocating for policy change, which is more comprehensive. It gets sort of beyond the individual levels to really support students in being agents of change in their community and in the broader society. So there could be sort of multiple sessions, skill building workshops for students around policy advocacy. There are resources like SAFER and the National Alliance to End Sexual Violence that can offer some really helpful tools to assist with that. And you could think about using Take Back the Night as sort of the unifying event as an opportunity for students and other members of the campus community to speak about policy goals, invite policy makers to attend and speak, invite students to sign petitions at the event or after the event, or use it as an opportunity to do voter registration kinds of campaigns, just as sort of an idea of boosting this very iconic, very important event towards something that could be larger. So that's sort of my example that I present to you for your consideration, and we wanted to invite all of you to share any ideas you may have about other ways. There are many other ways that you could boost your prevention power with a rally, march, or speak out. So if you want to take a moment, add any thoughts you have in the question box, and we'll just sort of read through and summarize some of other folks' great ideas.
So we haven't heard from anyone yet in the questions box. It's sort of where our chat usually is. It looks like one response has just come in now. So there's an example of partnering with a state coalition to bring students to the Capitol to meet their legislators. That's a really great example of a very, community-wide, long-term engagement approach.
Also, another participant is hosting a screening of The Hunting Ground along with a panel discussing following the film so that folks have an opportunity for community engagement and discourse. And I think that's a wonderful idea, and I could even see it sort of turning into a conversation about ways the film sort of speaks to needs on that specific campus, and maybe doing some action planning around ways to create change on campus using the film as a starting point for that. That's great. Open panels and focus groups for students on the topics that we just discussed, and providing food always helps.
Yes.
A really important thing we've heard.
We interviewed a campus-based preventionist in preparing our materials, and they said the strongest prevention strategy they had to offer was having good snacks. So we have folks that are partnering with folks at the county level and partnering with other local colleges. And then someone actually shared a question on this and around reporting and the faculty responsibility to report sexual assault, in that could be something that is someone can make a disclosure at a rally or speak out, and then that would be you know, a situation where someone would be obligated to make a report. And I think that they're asking other participants to share if they've run into that problem. And if you want to go ahead, we'll move on in the presentation, but go ahead and share your response if you have one from a campus perspective. And we can share that with the person who's asked this question.
And there's a logistical question about whether you should be able to see other people's comments here. Unfortunately, no. We're trying to sort of go through and summarize some of folks' comments in this way. So thank you all very much for participating.
And yes, and we do have an answer to the question that we put out there, and it looks like a couple folks are chiming in that OCR provides an exception for Speak Out and Take Back the Night events, or that Title IX reporting is exempt from these public meeting events. There's a special waiver for that type of event, and it looks like, you know, I'm guessing that our partners who are hosting at the Clery Center might have some more concrete feedback on the actual process of submitting the waiver, or their partners on the call.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. I want to do another quick couple of examples. So I know in the beginning of our poll, when we asked what folks have typically done for Sexual Assault Awareness Month, campus, the sort of single session campus workshops was, I think, maybe the most common approach to SAAM. And that is another really popular, really important part of what campuses are doing for Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And throughout the year, sort of going to dorms, going to fraternities and sororities, sometimes going to classrooms, going out to student organizations, and doing workshops around what sexual violence is, what consent is, all kinds of different things around sexual violence awareness. So a couple of ideas to potentially boost your prevention power with campus workshops. One idea that is presented in one of our campus resources for SAAM this year is to work with faculty. So sometimes as a preventionist on a campus, you may be able to, or you may already be reaching out to faculty and asking for a little bit of class time or a class session to be able to get in and do a presentation. Campuses that have peer education programs, often peer educators will offer to sort of be a substitute. If a professor is going to be away and unable to teach a class, you can bring in the sexual violence prevention peer educators to do a presentation in that time. And I think you could sort of boost your prevention power even further, potentially, by seeing if you can meet with academic departments and talk with faculty about ways that they could potentially incorporate prevention messaging into their regular course content in the regular curriculum. So for example, faculty may make a point over the course of a term to highlight people in their discipline who've spoken out against unethical practices in their field, to really highlight the importance of engaged and responsible bystanders. So it's not necessarily a direct message, but really promoting the ideals, the norms around bystander engagement, bystander intervention. Or in history classes or literature classes, when issues of violence or oppression come up, it may be an option for professors to have students relate that material to social conditions and attitudes today. So in addition to doing sort of your, in the month of April, one-time campus presentations, thinking about a way to sort of take it to the next level and work with faculty. See if you can connect with faculty and have them build some of those messaging into their regular curricula as well. Is an idea, and I think we have some additional ideas coming in.
There's one idea that I really love. It's an example that came from Ellen, and she offers, it's still a campus workshop, but it's a campus workshop with prevention-focused content. Consent 101, how to have healthy, have good sex or healthy sexuality, a positive sexuality-focused workshop. And that's a really great example of how the content that you're sharing during your outreach and awareness activities can be, you know, directly approaching that social norms change and that positive prevention messaging.
Another person has reached out to faculty to get Faculty Against Rape, which is an organization of Faculty Against Rape, to organize a flash lecture or something similar, which also helps to identify faculty who might want to work with us on an ongoing basis, which is great.
And that's, I think that that's a great way to know who your allies are on campus and then be able to connect with those allies to identify who is not on board, and sort of integrating those people who may not self-identify as allies as being a department that is a part of, that is engaged in prevention efforts.
Another idea, having monthly sex positive workshops on various elements of sexuality. So fabulous, sort of turning the one-time session into sort of increasing your dose, getting back to having sufficient dose, exposing students to the opportunity to talk about various aspects of sexuality and healthy sexuality throughout the year.
It looks like we have a policy-based example as well, where someone's working with their campus faculty to include Title IX information in their syllabus. And someone who's also has shared a question, someone who's based at a historically Black college, is asking about looking for promotional materials and content that is highlighting diverse students and students of color. And they've asked if we have any recommendations, and I'd love to put that back out to the folks that are participating to see if folks can contribute through the chat. I know that a lot of the messaging and materials that come out of campus-based activism and shared on social media really do reflect a diverse array of students, because it's organically coming from students that are having these experiences and addressing this issue. I would definitely recommend exploring like social media options, specifically Tumblr has been a tool that students have organized great campaigns around as well. And someone also has recommended partnering with members of Greek life and to getting them involved.
Great. All right, and we have one more example to touch on briefly. I think several folks indicated that, and this has come up in a couple of what you all have been entering into the question box as well, having poster, poetry, essay, fundraising, or other competitions on campus. A lot of folks do, and a couple ideas for sort of boosting your prevention power around having these competitions might be to do several of these and space them out throughout the year so that there are multiple opportunities and potentially multiple sort of times when students would participate or sort of see the winning entries on campus rather than just in the month of April. Also potentially partnering with campus media, so campus radio, campus newspaper, to sort of share the winning entries more broadly, and also building in some more learning opportunities into the contest or the competition. So it's really important that students who are going to participate in the contest or the competition have some sort of skill building initially to make sure that the poster or the essay or other creative product that they're going to come up with is consistent with the prevention messaging that you really want to put out there and to promote and endorse within the campus community. And everybody comes from a different background, and everybody has a lifetime of learning some of the myths and misconceptions around sexual violence. So having a contest or competition can also be a chance to do some of that sort of upfront programming to make sure everybody's reflecting your core values around prevention in their messaging. Any other ideas that you all want to share about ways that you've boosted your prevention power with various contests or competitions?
We do have some feedback from participants that I think is really relevant to this specific prompt, but it's actually as a response to one of our questions about working to represent diverse students and the experiences and be inclusive of diverse students. So they are just offering the recommendation that campus should take an active part in incorporating their student organizations on campus. So if there are students of color that are organizing on campus that are in there are groups that are that are actively on campus involving those students in creating prevention messaging and participating in sharing that messaging so that it is representative and reflective. And then someone has asked a great question about concerns around essays or poetry that could be triggering. That could be a challenge to to share and have some of that traumatic elements to it. And I think that this is it's a really great question, and it kind of points to the piece of how when we are engaging with our community and we're doing, we're inviting students into our work and everyone into our work, they're bringing not only their experiences, but their own perspectives and, education and possibly biases to the table. And so like our role as, folks that are engaging the community is to kind of simultaneously, to be shepherding those messages along and to be identifying, if it's a story that is potentially triggering, how do you respond in a way that is validating to the person that did the very vulnerable thing of sharing that story, but then also being, kind of aware of what the needs of the broader, groups are as well. And I think that that same kind of challenging question can come up when students maybe who are her students or other campus partners are sharing messaging that may not be consistent with your prevention core values, and it may be either victim blaming or very risk reduction centered, and really having to push people along and shepherd them along in seeing the bigger picture as well. Okay, I think in the interest of time, we may. Yeah, and it looks like some folks just shared about distributing in different mediums and using different devices and platforms to be engaging. And then again, of course, for those to be prevention boosted events, you really want to make sure that those messages that you're sharing on other platforms, whether it be a mobile video contest or anything like that, that you're putting out prompts that are going to engage people in thinking about changing the norms and culture on campus, and sort of the community responsibility to addressing campus sexual violence, and thinking beyond an individual focus. Great. So some additional ways to participate in Sexual Assault Awareness Month that we wanted to mention are the Day of Action on Tuesday, April 7th, and Denim Day, Wednesday, April 29th.
You can also think about media campaigns, letters to the editor, having a proclamation, declaring it Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and declaring the campus's commitment to preventing sexual violence, doing walks, 5Ks, Zumba, art exhibits, all of those things. And again, you can continue to think about ways to boost your prevention power with some of those events. We wanted to also move into matching your message to your audience. And really, we want to think about matching your message to your audiences. We typically have tended to focus on programs and activities and strategies that really sort of are tailored to individual students with self-defense classes and first-year orientation activities. And that is all important and wonderful and good, but individuals also exist on campus in relationship to others and are influenced by their peers, their coaches, their professors, their mentors, their bosses, everybody else on campus. So we can think about strategies, we can think about all of those people as parts of our audiences as well. And then each of those relationships happens in the broader community. So we want to think about the various ways that various components of our campus community are parts of our audience. So faculty may be one of your audiences. The library staff may be one of your audiences. We can think about lots of different folks. And then there are also opportunities for students and faculty and staff and everybody to become agents of change and think about the broader society almost as their audience and ways that they can be speaking to policymakers and media makers and all of those other people.
Because it's not just an issue on your campus, and it's not just an issue on campuses. So I think that although campuses are super under the microscope right now, we definitely want to affirm that this is a broader social issue and that a lot of the activism engagement can also be incorporated in that broader way.
And so thinking about all of those audiences, you can ask, is your campus strategy ready? Is it relevant, engaging, accessible, diverse, and inclusive of all of those different audiences that you may want to be thinking about reaching in different ways with your strategy in Sexual Assault Awareness Month and your sexual violence prevention strategy overall?
Yes, and now I'm just going to tell you a little bit about, because as we're sharing all of these kind of concepts and prevention strategies, we would never want to minimize the fact that it is a lot of work, and oftentimes our prevention allies on campuses are a little bit under-resourced and understaffed, and we get that it is an uphill battle, but also we definitely want to encourage you all that there are many folks that are engaging in this work on campuses and in community, and let you know what resources we have that'll hopefully help you on this journey to providing more comprehensive prevention programming on your campus. And so I wanted to let you all know where you will find our SAAM materials and resources, and that's on our website, nsvrc.org/SAAM. And if you see that lovely banner that says click here, that's where all of our campus-specific resources that are new for this year are all housed. And so this includes like fact sheets, posters, statistics, but we also have things like an overview, which really kind of talks about the framework of campus sexual violence prevention. And if you are someone who's on a campus that is, you know, maybe working to kind of institutionalize that approach, that could be, you know, even if this is content that is already within your knowledge, it can be a great way to kind of build the knowledge of others and to kind of build the prevention understanding of allies and partners as well. And we also have materials on campaign planning and planning events. We have an events guide that actually does something similar to what we facilitated on the presentation today, where it kind of gives some tips on taking traditional events and having a prevention element to it. And we also provide resources in Spanish as well. And we also, for this year's campaign, just knowing that there's been so much activism and involvement happening, wanted to create some materials for sharing and for sharing the messages of creating change on campus. And so we have posters that are available. We can send them in the format of our mailer that tells you it's a brochure all about the campaign and then has a poster inside of it. but you can also print out these posters in a number of different sizes, black and white or in full color from our website, and those can be a part of your SAAM messaging and just kind of identifying what your campus is doing with the national campaign and being kind of sprinkling that message around campus that this is this is something that your campus is committed to, and that you all are participating in SAAM. And there's also a lot of online activism that happens during SAAM, and NSVRC tries to create lots of opportunities in addition to what people bring online in their promotion and sharing of what either their events they're doing or talking about the topic in general. And so we're actively on the platforms of Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, and Pinterest. And I know many folks from campuses are also, many departments of campuses have different platforms, and those can be places where you're also sharing your SAAM messaging or engaging with us as your resource center and connecting with the materials that we have to offer. We have a really great brief video that is just, it's under a minute, so it doesn't answer all the questions, but it's a great introduction to campus sexual violence prevention and this message of everyone has a role to play and everyone can be involved. And that's definitely something that you want to be putting out there to your colleagues, and that, whether or not you are the only person with prevention in your title on campus, or you're the only person with it in your job description, that doesn't mean that you are, that you're going to be able to take it on your own, and that everyone needs to be involved within the campus community, but also in a broader perspective too, because all campuses are located in other communities. As Annie's maps are showing you, if you just keep zooming out, it becomes clearer and clearer how vital these connections are. And so you'll also be able to find all of those tools and materials online, in addition to some products that we offer in the SAAM store that's also on our website, and those can be helpful if you do choose to have events where you have either a giveaway or item, and we try to make those as affordable and eco-friendly as possible. But of course, every campus has a budget, and we get that. And so to kind of close out our conversation today, we're going to really tie in a lot of what we talked about in the sort of matching your goals and matching your audience to building your long-term prevention plan. And so we've been asking you to think strategically about audience, goals, messaging. We've offered some materials, but now we're going to really focus in on these last 3 points, the capacity, partners, and the element of evaluation, because those are really elements that are going to help us when we're thinking about long-term, sustainable, campus-wide, comprehensive efforts. Those are kind of key pieces. And so I'm going to ask a quick poll of what's currently working in your favor. When you think about what your campus is, either it's the resources that your campuses offer, what you're doing for SAAM, what do you think your assets are? What's in your toolbox? What's going well for your campus community? And if you could share that
in the question box.
In the question box. And we haven't had any answers come through yet, but we're hoping you all feel like there's some aspects of your programming and efforts that are working in your favor.
Having a designated employee for healthy relationships and sexual awareness coordination. Great. Definitely having somebody committed to this as a full-time employee is great.
We have the idea of actually featuring students in your prevention materials and posters and PSAs, and that is wonderful as well. And honestly, a great, when we're thinking about that ready model, a really great way to incorporate those true-to-life aspects.
Another strength or asset is having other departments really promoting the messages as well in various ways.
Student organizations are mentioned, and that's a great one as well. Folks mentioned having close-knit sessions, small groups that are sort of working together on an ongoing basis, the alignment of student government, A supportive director, that's awesome too. So these are all really good examples of you know, the inroads that your campus already has. And I think that it's so important to start from a strengths-based place when you're thinking about you know, building towards something comprehensive in the uphill battle of campus sexual violence prevention is like knowing those assets and thinking of them as tools in your toolbox and as a part of your capacity. And so what we kind of think a great place to start when you're strategizing is instead of recreating the wheel, connecting the dots and see what those assets are and think about what fits best with what you are currently doing and what fits best within that set of assets. And so, for example, someone shared that they think an asset is having intimate discussion groups or like an active small knit group, and if that's a group that is already successful, is it a multi-session educational program when you're meeting with those groups? Because that's a great way, of course, to be building it more toward prevention. Is the focus of your meetings and discussion that prevention messaging and material, and kind of thinking about those assets as your launching point, as you're building capacity. And now, one of the other ways that we think is essential to boost capacity is to do growing partnerships. And we definitely, you know, we know that within your campus, you're not alone. You're not the only individual that is committed to addressing campus sexual violence, and it is going to boost your prevention power to be connecting with partners. And so if you could share in the question box who you identify as your on-campus partners, the people within your campus community who are a resource to you in your SAAM efforts, in your overall prevention response efforts, who's actively involved in a great way. And we can say someone mentioned their director when we asked the last question, so it's great when there's leadership that is a part of your partner. We have someone sharing about a campus director and management team who is a supportive partner. I almost think of also the categories of folks. If you're representing one discipline today on the webinar, do you find that in other departments, in other offices that you have partners? Do you in campus faculty, or do you find partners there? And thinking about how those evolving partnerships are really bringing more people into your work. So someone is also mentioning the SGA as a partner, Peer Health Educators, Student Association, Diversity Commission,
Student RAs, Title IX Coordinator. Someone mentioned criminology faculty who've been really involved. Somebody mentioned having a comprehensive prevention task force on their campus. Student Affairs, Student Conduct, Women's Center, Greek Life, Multicultural Office.
Someone's really, that was all in one example. So they are networked. Their partner power is already, you know, really adding to their capacity. We have someone who mentions the Social Worker Club, which is a really great idea. Those are students who are already, you know, self-identified as wanting to be involved in social change. Someone's working closely with their Clery Center officer. And another person is really echoing this idea of having relationships with professors is a great way to strengthen your reach, and really seeing professors as an asset as well. One of the pieces of feedback we got from campus partners who we connected to in preparing for today was on the value of co-sponsoring activities and seeing that you know, sometimes your message is even stronger when it's coming from multiple voices and there's multiple you know, groups that are attached to it and multiple folks involved and at the table. So again, departments on campus can be a coalition, and knowing those allies is a huge asset. And I also want you to think about who your partners are in the community. So kind of bursting the campus bubble and thinking about outside of that, who in the community is actively a partner to you or a potential partner. And you can share those as well in the questions box. And I'm gonna leap off of one of the comments that came in very early in our presentation, where someone mentioned that they've already partnered with their state sexual assault coalition. And for those of you who don't know, every state, or for the most part, most states have a committed body of folks working to address the topic of sexual violence in your state, as well as legislation and services, and so that would be your state coalition. And there's also local programs in every state as well, and in every community. So someone has shared connecting with neighborhood-based police officers. And that's absolutely local law enforcement is someone who you definitely want to be, supporting your efforts. And it's also someone you want to be reaching with your prevention messaging. So when we gave the example earlier in our presentation of not just reaching students, but actually training faculty, have you trained local law enforcement? And then there's just such a spectrum when it comes to folks' understanding of the issue of sexual violence, and do they have everything that they need to know to be a trauma-informed responder?
So a few people have mentioned working with their local rape crisis centers. A couple people have also mentioned working with local restaurants and bars that are willing to put up information, use posters with prevention information, and also thinking about training staff of restaurants and bars in bystander intervention skills. Someone also mentioned the local court system and local churches and other businesses as well, doctors' offices.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
And I think these are really great examples of how partners can be assets, and really thinking broadly of thinking about how, no matter what the discipline is, that really like the core values of prevention can be relevant to so many different people in the community. And one of the things that I did just kind of want to, as we're closing out our conversation, is thinking about not only is there a power to partnership, but there's also the ways that our messages are sometimes strengthened when they're coming from a variety of sources, but then also when you're bringing in other messengers, really thinking about what messages they're sharing and if it aligns with your goals, and thinking about that the kind of the fluency and skills that your partners and other trainers have. For example, a lot of campuses do tend to engage outside speakers, or in the box prevention programs, and that those can kind of in some ways be outsourcing your message. So making sure that whoever you're connecting with is someone who's going to share a message that aligns with your plans and goals. And I am good at we're really getting close to our time here. It's such a good conversation. So again, another piece that already came up when you all were sharing before is that students are partners. They are not just your audience. They are absolutely your partners and allies in your prevention efforts, and it's so valuable to see them as such.
So just very briefly, we wanted to come back to one of the principles of prevention, which is evaluation, and this really brings it full circle. We start out by looking at what's currently working, what our strengths are, and what we need, then set those goals. And once we've done the program, we want to come back and evaluate the program and find out what new strengths we've built and what needs still remain and continue in this process, which you can also think about how that potentially maps onto your academic cycle as well, so that you're thinking about your comprehensive prevention plan year-round. So we had this very ambitious agenda for the day. This is the journey that we have taken, and we've talked about matching your strategy to your goals, matching your message to your audience, building your long-term prevention plan, and through that, we've really touched on each of these principles of effective prevention. And if we have any remaining questions.
There is one question that came through, and I'm going to share my response with the whole audience, and it's where can we access these materials? And they are absolutely free. NSVRC is a grant-funded, not-for-profit organization, so the materials that we're sharing for you are freely available, and they're available online, and I'm going to send that response to all folks. And that's just to our general SAAM website, and you have to navigate there a little bit to get to the different types of resources, but we're hoping it's pretty easy to access things. And you can also, through our website or through the phone, reach out to us directly, and we can hand guide you to whatever would be helpful. So thank you so much for being with us for a very busy hour, and for listening, for sharing, and contributing some excellent ideas to the conversation on boosting your prevention efforts, and seeing SAAM as not just a one-time-a-year activity, but really as a part of a year-long commitment and an overall plan to addressing sexual violence on campus. These are all ways that you can stay in touch with us. And thank you, Clery Center, for hosting this call. We're sorry that we've gone a little bit over on our time today.
Sorry about that, a couple technical difficulties. But thank you all so much for joining us. And just as a reminder, we'll send along the PowerPoint and the recording of the webinar within 48 hours to everyone who registered. So if there are no more questions, we'll just thank you again, NSVRC, for a really wonderful presentation. And we hope that you all will tune in for our next series of webinars. Thank you.
Thank you.